You know what's fascinating? You can have a man's full attention one day, his calls, his messages, his affection, and then suddenly it starts to fade. The rhythm changes. The silence creeps in. You begin to wonder, what happened? Did I do something wrong? But here's the truth most people never tell you. It's not about what you did. It's about what you allow. See, there's a powerful shift that happens when a woman learns how to carry herself in such a way that her presence becomes a privilege, not a convenience. When a man starts to realize that your energy, your peace, your attention are not things he can take for granted, that's when he starts to miss you. Not in a shallow, momentary way, but deeply, mentally, emotionally. Because when you are truly in your power, you are not easily replaced. And let me make something clear. You don't make a man miss you by disappearing, blocking him, or playing cold games. You make him miss you by becoming unforgettable, by being that woman who carries herself with such confidence, such grace, such peace, that even your absence speaks louder than your words. The truth is, we live in a world where attention is cheap, but energy, real energy, is rare. And when your energy is rare, it's remembered. When you stop chasing, when you stop explaining, when you stop pouring into someone who's not pouring back, something magical happens. The silence starts to echo. The distance begins to speak. And suddenly, he realizes that what he once had, he can't find anywhere else. So if you've ever been the woman who gave too much, tried too hard, loved too deeply without boundaries, this message is for you. Because today, we're not talking about manipulation, we're talking about mastery. Emotional mastery, the kind that makes a man's mind replay your presence. Even in your absence, he won't miss you because you begged for his attention. He'll miss you because your silence taught him something your words never could. What it feels like to lose access to a woman who knows her worth. And that's where your power begins. Let's get something straight from the start. You can't make anyone truly miss you if they never respected you in the first place. Respect is the foundation of emotional connection. It's what keeps your presence significant in someone's mind, long after you're gone. Without it, distance doesn't create desire, it creates relief. The kind of man who doesn't value your worth when you're around will only feel peace when you walk away, not longing. And that's the truth many people avoid facing. Missing you doesn't begin when you pull away. It begins when your presence meant something in the first place. If you were always the one giving, fixing, forgiving, explaining, proving, you didn't leave him with respect, you left him with comfort. Comfort doesn't inspire longing. Respect does. The moment a man realizes that you're not just another woman who tolerates being undervalued, he starts to see you differently. Your absence suddenly holds weight because your presence once carried strength. You see, many people confuse attention with respect. Attention can be given to anyone. Respect is earned. A man can be attracted to you, can desire you, can even spend time with you, but still not respect you. Respect means he recognizes the value of what he's experiencing. It means he knows that your time, your energy, and your presence are not guaranteed. When you stop settling for the bare minimum, when you stop accepting half-hearted behavior, you communicate something silently but powerfully. You can't have access to me unless you treat me right. That's when things begin to shift. That's when missing you becomes inevitable. Because what people respect, they remember. And what they remember, they crave. The truth is, when you operate from self-respect, you don't have to play games to create distance. Your energy naturally creates it. You stop showing up for people who don't show up for you. You stop explaining what should already be understood. You stop trying to prove your worth to someone who refuses to see it. And when that happens, you become a mirror, reflecting back to that man his own lack of effort, his own inconsistency, his own complacency. And nothing makes a man miss a woman more than realizing he lost someone who only ever gave him genuine love and stability. Respect also changes the way you handle yourself emotionally. When you respect yourself, you don't beg for clarity, you create it. You don't chase closure, you become it. You don't argue to be seen, you walk away to be remembered. The most powerful energy you can ever carry is quiet certainty, the kind that says, I don't need you to validate me. I know who I am. That energy makes people stop and think. It leaves a mark. Because when you truly value yourself, you stop being reactive. You don't explode, you don't plead, you don't demand attention. You observe, you decide, and you distance yourself. That calm strength unsettles people, not because it's cold, but because it's grounded. It tells them they can't manipulate you emotionally. It tells them that you operate from choice, not desperation. And here's the irony. The moment you stop trying to make someone miss you is the moment they begin to. Why? Because people are drawn to what they cannot control. The minute they sense that you've detached emotionally, that you've redirected your energy inward, that you're no longer affected by their silence or attention, that's when they start to feel the loss. But that loss didn't come from absence alone. It came from the respect they developed when they realized you would never lose yourself trying to keep them. So if you want a man to miss you, stop focusing on distance and start focusing on presence. How do you show up when you're with him? Do you shrink to keep the peace? Do you silence your standards out of fear he'll leave? Do you overextend yourself because you're afraid of being replaced? Every time you betray your own boundaries, you teach him that your presence is easy to access, easy to take advantage of, and what's easy is rarely valued. On the other hand, when you stand firm in your boundaries, when you're kind but not naive, when you express love without losing yourself in the process, that's when your presence becomes powerful. You become a woman who commands respect without having to demand it. A woman who can be soft without being weak. A woman who gives without being drained. And that balance, that emotional strength, is magnetic. It's the kind of energy that lingers long after you leave the room. Because the truth is, missing someone is about emotional impact. And emotional impact is built through authenticity and strength. When you live in alignment with your values, when you say what you mean and mean what you say, when you treat yourself as someone worthy of love and effort, you naturally command attention. Not because you're trying to manipulate anyone, but because your energy is real, and real is rare. A man doesn't miss a woman who's constantly available. He misses the woman who brought peace, mystery, and meaning to his life. He misses the woman who inspired him to do better, who carried herself with grace under pressure, who didn't crumble when he pulled away. He misses the woman who respected herself enough to walk away when her worth wasn't recognized. So understand this. Respect is not about demanding. It's about demonstrating. Every time you choose self-control over reaction, standards over desperation, self-worth over comfort, you're building respect. And respect is what anchors your memory in someone's mind long after time and distance have done their part. When he thinks about you, he won't remember the texts you sent or the times you tried to convince him. He'll remember your composure, your energy, your silence, the way you didn't fall apart when he expected you to. That's what makes a man miss you like crazy. Not your absence, but the strength of who you were when you were present. Because absence without respect is forgettable. But absence built on respect, that's unforgettable. Silence has power, more than most people realize. We live in a world addicted to noise, to constant updates, to never letting a moment pass without filling it with words, emojis, or validation. But here's what few understand. Sometimes the most powerful statement you'll ever make is the one you don't say at all. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's emotional discipline. When used with confidence, it creates contrast. The kind that makes someone stop and feel your absence on a deep, unsettling level. See, people get used to your energy. They get used to your messages, your check-ins, your presence. They start to take your consistency for granted because you've trained them to expect it. Every good morning text, every just checking in, every instant reply tells them I'm still here, no matter what. And while that may come from love, it often teaches them complacency. They don't have to value your presence when they're certain you'll never take it away. But when you step back, not out of anger, not out of manipulation, but out of self-respect, you change the rhythm. The silence creates space. Space that forces him to notice the difference between what life feels like when you're there and what it feels like when you're not. That space becomes a mirror, reflecting to him everything he took for granted. It's not punishment, it's awareness. It's letting him experience the value of what he once had access to. The beauty of silence is that it doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, and it doesn't chase. It simply exists. And in that stillness, people begin to confront their own emotions. The mind starts to wander. Why isn't she reaching out? Did I lose her attention? Did I push her too far? That's when missing you begins. Not because you're gone, but because your energy isn't feeding him anymore. You've withdrawn the validation, the softness, the presence that once filled his days, and that void feels louder than words ever could. Here's the thing about emotional contrast. It only works when your presence was meaningful to begin with. You can't create silence that echoes if your voice never mattered. But when you've shown up authentically with love, care, and genuine effort, your silence carries weight. It's not empty, it's powerful. Because now he's comparing the peace and warmth you once gave to the quiet he now sits in. That's the contrast. That's the moment when missing you becomes real. Too often people use silence as a game, as manipulation. But true emotional contrast isn't about playing hard to get. It's about learning not to overgive. It's about emotional maturity. It's saying, I don't need to prove my worth to you. If you can't see it, that's your loss. That mindset changes everything. Because when your silence comes from strength and not fear, it shifts the dynamic. You stop chasing attention and start commanding it. Think about it. When you're always available, your presence blends into the background. It becomes familiar, predictable, almost invisible. But when you pull back, when you stop being the one to initiate every interaction, you disrupt that pattern. You remind him that your time and attention are not infinite resources. You reintroduce scarcity, not out of manipulation, but because you refuse to keep giving energy where it's not appreciated. And that's when he starts to feel your absence. He might not admit it at first. Maybe he distracts himself, pretends he doesn't notice. But over time, the silence grows heavy. The conversations that used to come easily now don't. The comfort of your presence, your laughter, your consistency, it's gone. And that's when realization hits. He starts to remember the little things, the way you listened, the calm you brought, the warmth of your energy. Silence has a way of amplifying memory. It forces the mind to fill in the gaps with reflection. And that reflection often leads to regret. But here's the key. Your silence must be clean. That means no passive-aggressive posts, no cryptic stories, no attempts to show that you've moved on. That's still noise, still a cry for attention. True silence is graceful. It's calm, it's detachment. It says, I've accepted the situation. I'm focusing on me now. And that kind of silence is terrifying to someone who expected you to always be there. Because it communicates one thing louder than words ever could. Indifference. And indifference is far more powerful than anger. When you master the art of silence, you take control of your emotions. You stop reacting. You stop proving. You stop performing. Instead, you observe. You protect your energy. You let distance do the work that words could never accomplish. Because sometimes the best response to disrespect or inconsistency is none at all. You withdraw your effort, your kindness, your energy, and you give that back to yourself. You start to fill your own life again, pour into your own peace, focus on your own growth. That shift is magnetic. The moment you stop chasing, you start attracting. The moment you stop reaching, he starts wondering. Because your silence says, I'm good without you. I don't need closure. I don't need explanations. I've moved on with grace. And that realization burns deeper than any argument ever could. People remember how you make them feel. When you're gone, they replay those emotions in their minds. If you were chaotic, clingy, or desperate, your absence feels like relief. But if you were calm, confident, nurturing, and strong, Your absence feels like loss. That's why emotional contrast is so powerful. You're showing them, through silence, the difference between your energy and the emptiness that follows when you take it away. So don't underestimate the power of stepping back. You don't have to delete, block, or announce anything. Just move differently. Become less available. Focus on your goals, your peace, your joy. Let him feel the shift without a single word, because silence, when used with purpose, becomes a language of its own. One that says, I'm no longer accessible to confusion. And one day, when he realizes that your absence feels heavier than your presence ever did, that's when he'll truly miss you. Not because you tried to make him, but because he finally understood what he lost when your voice stopped filling the silence. Silence is an emptiness. It's a reflection of your worth. It's the sound of your boundaries being respected. It's the echo of your self-respect reclaiming its place. And when you learn to use it not as a weapon, but as a wisdom, you'll discover something beautiful. You don't need to make anyone miss you. They'll do it on their own, the moment they realize how peaceful their world felt when you were in it, and how quiet it's become without you. The moment you decide to stop orbiting your world around someone else is the moment you start becoming magnetic. Nothing, and I mean nothing, makes a person miss you more than watching you become completely fulfilled without them. When your happiness, your growth, your peace no longer depend on another human being, you instantly change your energy, and that energy is powerful. It's unshakable. It's the kind of energy that doesn't chase love, it attracts it. When you start to build a life of your own, you stop needing validation. You stop waiting for the text, the call, or the apology to determine how your day will feel. You begin to understand that your peace is your responsibility. And that realization is freedom, because now your emotional stability isn't something someone can take from you anymore. They can distance themselves, they can ignore you, they can leave, but they can't shake your foundation. The truth is, too many people lose themselves in relationships. They make someone else their purpose. They put all their dreams, energy, and time into another person, forgetting that they once had a life before them. That's when the imbalance begins. When you hand over the keys to your happiness, you automatically hand over your power. And when that person pulls away, your entire world collapses. Not because they left, but because you forgot who you were without them. Developing an unshakable life of your own means returning home to yourself. It means rediscovering the things that make your soul light up. It's about building a life so full, so rich, so deeply rooted in purpose that your peace can't be threatened by someone else's inconsistency. This is not about pretending you don't care. It's about living in such a way that even when you care, you don't lose yourself. Think about the most magnetic people you know. The ones everyone seems drawn to. They all share something in common. They're centered, they have direction, they move with purpose. They're not desperate for attention because they're already full from within. Their life is already meaningful. They don't chase love. They choose it. They don't need anyone to complete them because they're already whole. That's what developing an unshakable life of your own does. It makes you whole. You become that person who's not just surviving without someone, but thriving. You wake up with goals. You pursue things that excite you. You start working on your mind, your body, your career, your peace. You build routines that bring stability and confidence. You stop waiting for someone else to make you feel loved, and instead, you start doing things that make you proud. And when you do that, you glow differently. Your energy shifts from wanting to be chosen to realizing you're already the choice. It's not just about success or independence, it's about emotional strength. When you learn to handle your own loneliness, to soothe your own pain, to celebrate your own wins, you become emotionally bulletproof. You stop reacting to rejection the same way. When someone pulls away, it stings, but it doesn't destroy you. You no longer crumble because your worth isn't attached to their attention. You can love deeply and still be okay if it ends. That's emotional maturity. And here's the paradox. When you build this kind of life, that's exactly when people start missing you. Because they can sense the difference. They feel that you don't need them, you want them. And that distinction changes everything. Need creates pressure. Want creates freedom. When you stop needing someone to fill your emotional void, your presence becomes peaceful instead of heavy. People start to feel safe with you, drawn to you. And when you're gone, they feel the lack of that peace. The truth is, people miss energy that made them feel alive, inspired, or calm. When you're constantly growing, when you're confident in your skin, when you radiate purpose, you become unforgettable. You stand out because you're not waiting for life to happen through someone else. You're creating it on your own. That's why the most irresistible kind of woman is the one who's busy becoming the best version of herself. She's not unavailable, she's just focused. Her energy says, I love you, but I'm not losing myself for you. Having an unshakable life also means having emotional boundaries. You don't give everyone access to your time, your body, or your mind. You know that not everyone deserves to experience your full presence. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop justifying your standards. You stop trying to make people see your worth because you've already seen it yourself. And when a woman reaches that level of peace, she's unforgettable. When a man watches you build, when he sees you finding joy in your solitude, when he sees you laughing again, not because someone made you happy, but because you made you happy, that's when he realizes your value. That's when missing you hits him the hardest. Because now he's watching someone who no longer revolves around him. He's watching someone who was once available to him, now live a life that doesn't need his validation to shine. And that's when he starts to remember. He remembers your kindness, your energy, your calm strength. He remembers the woman who gave him grace and presence, but who now gives that to herself. And it's not a performance. You're not pretending. You've simply evolved. You've built an identity so strong that you no longer need to prove your worth through anyone else's eyes. Building your own life doesn't mean you don't want love. It means you're ready for love that adds to you, not drains you. It means you want partnership, not dependence. It means you've stopped chasing people and started attracting peace. Because you finally understand that being alone is not the same as being lonely. It's being grounded in who you are. So start building. Go to the gym. Start that business. Read more. Travel. Learn. Grow. Take care of your health. Heal your inner world. Fall in love with your routines, your hobbies, your solitude. Fill your life so much that no one else becomes the center of it. Because when you build an unshakable life, you stop being replaceable. You stop being an option. You become a standard. And the most beautiful part? When you're at peace with yourself, you stop worrying about who misses you. Because deep down, you know they eventually will. People always miss peace once they've lost it. They always miss the one who didn't beg, who didn't break, who simply built a life so full that her absence became louder than her presence ever was. That's the kind of woman no man forgets. Not because she was hard to get, but because she was too grounded to lose herself trying to be kept. There comes a moment when you finally realize that love isn't about how much you give. It's about giving to the right person in the right measure. With the right boundaries, overgiving is one of the fastest ways to lose respect, both from others and from yourself. It starts innocently. You care, you want to help, you want to make things work. You reach out first, you check in, you plan, you compromise. You pour from your heart thinking that your consistency will make someone value you more. But what actually happens is the opposite. The more you overextend, the less they invest. The more available you are, the less they try. And one day you wake up feeling empty, wondering why the effort was never mutual. Overgiving doesn't come from love, it comes from fear. The fear of losing someone, the fear of not being enough, the fear that if you stop doing, you'll stop mattering. But real love isn't earned through exhaustion. You can't prove your worth by carrying all the emotional weight in a relationship. Because every time you give without balance, you teach the other person that you'll always be there, even when they don't show up for you. You teach them that your love comes with no boundaries. And once someone learns that, they stop respecting the value of what you offer. Matching energy doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means becoming wise. It means paying attention to actions instead of words. It means noticing when you're the only one initiating, the only one trying, the only one sacrificing, and instead of complaining or begging for effort, you pull back with grace. You allow the silence to speak. You stop forcing connection and start letting it reveal itself. Because if you're the only one trying to hold something together, it's not a relationship, it's a rescue mission. Think about it. When you overgive, you create imbalance. You pour all your love, time, and energy into someone who's only giving you a fraction of that back. And while you think that your giving will inspire them to give more, it often does the opposite. It makes them comfortable. They stop pursuing, stop showing effort, stop appreciating. Why? Because you've already filled every space with your presence. There's nothing for them to earn, no space for them to step up. Overgiving takes away their opportunity to contribute, and people rarely value what they didn't have to work for. That's why matching energy is essential. It's not revenge, it's self-respect. It's learning to mirror what's being given instead of overcompensating for what's missing. If someone communicates with you occasionally, don't text them constantly. If they make minimal effort, don't meet them with maximum energy. Meet people where they are, and not where you wish they would be. This doesn't mean withholding love. It means protecting your peace. You're not punishing anyone by matching energy. You're simply refusing to participate in one-sided dynamics. When you start matching energy, something powerful happens. You begin to see people's intentions clearly. When you stop overgiving, the relationship becomes honest. If someone truly values you, they'll notice the shift and step forward. But if they were only there because of what you provided, they'll fade. That clarity might sting, but it's also freedom. It teaches you who's really for you and who's just there for convenience. And here's the beauty of it. The more you stop overgiving to others, the more you start giving to yourself. You start pouring that same energy into your own growth, your own goals, your own healing. You stop waiting for someone else to fill you, because you've finally learned to fill yourself. You start showing up for you the way you used to show up for everyone else. And that shift changes everything. Your energy, your confidence, your peace. When a man feels that shift, he notices. He feels the distance. He feels the loss of access to your constant attention, your nurturing presence, your emotional labor. Suddenly he realizes that the dynamic has changed. He's no longer being endlessly catered to. He's no longer being chased. He starts to wonder, what happened? Why does she feel different? The curiosity grows into awareness that he had something valuable, and he let it slip into familiarity. And that's when missing you begins. But here's what's important. Your goal isn't to make him miss you. Your goal is to reclaim balance, to make sure that love doesn't drain you. Because when you keep giving beyond what's reciprocated, you lose alignment with yourself. You become resentful, anxious, and emotionally tired. You start to question your own worth because you're trying to get water from an empty well. And love should never feel like begging for drops. You need to remind yourself that reciprocity isn't too much to ask for. It's the minimum requirement for emotional safety. You deserve to be met with the same energy you give. You deserve someone who listens when you speak, who reaches out first, who checks on you without being asked. But you'll never receive that kind of love if you keep settling for less. People only rise to the level that you require. If you keep doing the work for both, they'll let you. Matching energy also means learning to detach with peace. You don't chase after explanations. You don't demand attention. You simply observe patterns and act accordingly. When someone's energy shifts, you don't panic. You adjust. That calm reaction is powerful. It tells the other person, I'm not desperate for your presence. I'm aware of my value. And when someone senses that you won't fight for crumbs anymore, they either step up or step out. Either way, you win. Because the truth is, when you overgive, you lose your mystery. You lose the natural polarity that makes someone appreciate your presence. But when you start matching energy, you reintroduce balance. You show that your love has depth, but also standards. You show that your heart is open, but not desperate. You show that your time is precious, and access to it must be earned, not assumed. And when you operate from that mindset, you attract a different kind of energy. You start meeting people who respect your boundaries, who reciprocate your efforts, who communicate consistently. You no longer have to beg for love. You simply attract what aligns with your new vibration. And those who can't meet you there, they fade naturally. So stop overgiving to prove your worth. You don't have to convince anyone to value you. You don't have to chase, explain, or overextend. Pull your energy back and watch who notices. Watch who tries to bridge the gap. Because the ones who care will make it known, and the ones who don't were never meant to stay. Remember, love is not about depletion. It's about exchange. Real connection feels mutual. It flows both ways. So from this moment on, make a promise to yourself. You will no longer shrink to fit into someone else's level of effort. You will no longer give endlessly to those who give you excuses. You will meet energy with energy, calm, confident, balanced. And as you do, you'll feel lighter. You'll feel peaceful. You'll feel powerful. Because when you stop overgiving, you stop betraying yourself. You stop begging for love, and instead, you start embodying it. That's when you become unforgettable. Not because you gave too much, but because you finally learned to give wisely. You become unforgettable the moment you stop trying to prove your worth and start living like you already know it. See, the women who stand out in a man's memory aren't the loudest, the most available, or the ones constantly fighting for attention. They're the ones who walk with quiet power, the kind that doesn't demand to be noticed, but is impossible to ignore. When you become that kind of woman, you don't chase validation. You don't compete for space. You create it. You make an impact without saying a word. And long after you're gone, your presence still lingers in his mind. What makes a man unable to replace you isn't your beauty, your charm, or even the moments you shared. It's your essence. It's the way you made him feel when you were around. It's the peace you brought when he was in chaos, the clarity you gave when he was uncertain, the standard you represented when he had none. A man can meet dozens of women, but very few will make him reflect, grow, or rise higher. When you hold yourself to a higher standard, you automatically inspire that same elevation in others. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not your presence in his life, but the transformation your presence caused. See, the women who can't be replaced don't chase men. They attract experiences. They invest in themselves so deeply that being in their orbit feels like being part of something powerful, something rare. Their conversations are meaningful, their silence is intentional, and their boundaries are clear. They have vision, purpose, and self-respect. They know that love is beautiful, but it's not supposed to come at the cost of peace or self-worth. So they give, but only where it's mutual. They love, but only when it's respected. And they walk away, not because they stopped caring, but because they refuse to stay where their value is questioned. The truth is, anyone can be liked for a moment, but being missed, that requires depth. That requires you to have something that can't be imitated. And that's why working on yourself, your goals, your mindset, your spirit isn't just self-care, it's strategy. You're not just building a life that makes you proud. You're building a presence that leaves an imprint. You're shaping a life so full, so grounded, that anyone who ever had access to it knows they experienced something extraordinary. When a man realizes that your world doesn't revolve around him, that you have purpose, passion, and peace outside of the relationship, it creates contrast. You're not desperate for attention because you have focus. You're not anxious about his next move because you're busy making your own. That independence is magnetic. It's not arrogance, it's self-possession. And the more you stand firm in that, the more his respect grows. He starts to understand that your energy isn't something he can take lightly, because your life doesn't stop when he pulls away. You keep moving, glowing, evolving, and that's when the missing begins. See, when you're irreplaceable, it's not because you were perfect. It's because you were authentic. You were real. You showed up as yourself. No games, no pretense, no masks. You had emotional intelligence, but you also had backbone. You were kind, but you had limits. You were nurturing, but not naive. That's rare in a world where many people trade authenticity for approval. And when a man experiences that kind of realness, he doesn't forget it. He might find someone else to fill the space, but he won't find someone else to fill the void. Becoming the woman he can't replace is not about being better than anyone else. It's about being whole within yourself. It's about doing the inner work to know what you deserve and not settling for less, no matter how tempting the comfort of familiarity might be. It's about walking away from anything that disrupts your peace and walking toward everything that aligns with your purpose. You become irreplaceable when you build a life so fulfilling that anyone who loses you knows they didn't just lose a partner. They lost an experience. So stop trying to be liked. Stop trying to prove that you're the one. Start focusing on being the woman who doesn't need to be chosen to know she's valuable. Be the woman who makes her own table, who knows her boundaries, who doesn't beg for presents because she's already complete in her solitude. When you become that woman, your energy changes. You no longer need to convince anyone to stay. They want to, because your presence feels different. Your peace feels different. Your love feels different. And even if someone walks away, they'll remember. Not because you made noise, but because your silence spoke volumes. Not because you chased, but because your absence had weight. You'll be the one that got away. Not because he couldn't have you, but because he couldn't rise to meet you. That's what happens when you live in your worth. You stop being an option. You become the standard. And here's the truth that will change everything. When you become the woman he can't replace, you no longer care if he ever tries to, because you know that your life, your peace, and your purpose are already full. You're not waiting to be remembered. You're too busy living a life that no one can forget. At the end of the day, the goal is not to make a man miss you. The goal is to become a woman who is so secure, so whole, so grounded in her identity that whether someone stays or leaves, you remain unshaken. Because the real power is not in being wanted, it's in being worthy and knowing it. When you operate from that place of self-worth, you stop begging for attention and start commanding respect. You stop chasing closure and start choosing peace. You stop waiting for someone to realize your value and start living like you already do. That's when everything changes. Because the truth is, when you know your value, you move differently. You speak differently. You love differently. You stop settling for half effort, half love, and half truth. Let them feel your absence, not because you're trying to punish them, but because your presence was that meaningful. Let them wonder how you can stay so calm, so collected, so radiant, even after they took you for granted. That's not indifference. That's self-respect. That's what it looks like when you stop needing validation from anyone who couldn't see your light in the first place. So don't lower your standards just to be understood. Don't shrink yourself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. Don't let anyone make you question your worth because they were too blind to see it. Stand tall, stand firm, live boldly, build a life so rich with purpose that no one's presence or absence can shake its foundation. And remember this, when you become a woman who knows her power, the world changes how it treats you. You won't need to manipulate, chase, or prove anything. You'll simply exist in truth, and truth has gravity. It pulls what's right for you and repels what isn't. Let them miss you if they must. But you keep rising, you keep glowing. You keep walking with your head high because a woman who knows her worth doesn't need to be remembered. She leaves an impression that time itself can't erase. That's real strength. That's real confidence. That's how you become the woman no one can forget, because you never needed them to remember you to begin with.